Hello, everyone. My name is Jisas Lemasagarai, or Lema. I'm a Senior Market Engagement Manager in our Mobile for Development work at the GSMA. We are very delighted to have the opportunity to join you today. This session will be an opportunity for you to learn more about the GSMA Innovation Fund for Digital Urban Services with regards to the sanitation sector. Just to give you an overview of the session, we will spend the first 5 minutes giving you a welcome of the GSMA and introducing you to our work. And then we'll spend another 15 minutes just giving you an overview of digital innovation in the sanitation sector. So this will cover our view of the challenge, the sanitation challenge, relevance of digital solutions to the sector, and the learning agenda for our innovation fund. And then for the next 25 minutes, we'll have a panel discussions with speakers from Luwat, Toilet Board Coalition, and Lusaka Water and Sanitation Company. We'd like to welcome our speakers and thank you for being part of this session. And then finally, we will spend the next 15 minutes doing a Q&A and wrapping up the session. So welcome all of you. Just on housekeeping, you can type your questions on the question and answer part of the Blue Jeans platform. And we will do our best to answer them throughout the session, as well as at the end of the session. So without further ado, let's get started. For those of you who don't know about the GSMA, we are a member organization with membership from 750 mobile operator members and over 400 companies in the broader mobile ecosystem. The GSMA is involved in a wide range of activities through advocacy, events, research, and insights. Mobile for Development of the GSMA drives innovation in digital technology to reduce inequalities in our world. Mobile for Development works within the mobile ecosystem and the development sector, advancing the use of mobile technology, connected devices, and other digital tools so they can make a positive difference in the planet and millions of lives. We have had a large-scale impact with close to 100 million people impacted through our work and that of our partners. None of this work would be possible without support from donors, and in particular the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. As you'll hear later about our Innovation Fund, Mobile for Development covers different thematic topics run through several programs. The topics relevant to this fund are run by 2 programs, namely the Digital Utilities Program, which supports urban resilience in low and middle-income countries by enabling access to essential utility services through digital solutions, and the Climate Tech Program, which unlocks the power of digital technology to create low-carbon and climate-resilient future. As you can see on the screen, some of our activities include risking and catalyzing innovation, research and insights, partnership facilitation and convening, and technical advisory to stakeholders. The GSMA Innovation Fund. So basically, just to give you a recap of the GSMA Innovation Fund, the GSMA has over 10 years of experience running innovation funds on a multitude of topics. And our approach has always been to fund projects that are inclusive, have a clear socio-economic impact, and are working towards commercial sustainability, and have the potential to reach end users at scale. The current round of Innovation Fund, which we announced last month, is the GSMA Innovation Fund for Digital Urban Services, which seeks to scale digital solutions that provide essential urban services to underserved populations from low and middle-income countries in Africa, South and Southeast Asia. So these essential urban services are included in the topics of plastic and waste management, energy, water, and sanitation. And as mentioned, this session covers the sanitation sector. Why this particular focus on essential urban services? So these services such as energy, water, sanitation, and plastics and waste management are essential to the well-being of city dwellers and the resilience of cities, particularly amidst a changing climate. While there has been a historic rise in mobile connectivity in low and middle-income countries, and particularly in cities, billions of people still lack access to these basic services. And with rapidly expanding informal settlements across Africa and Asia, where 90% of global urban growth from now until 2050 will be concentrated, water shortages, unsanitary conditions, unreliable power provision, and inadequate waste management could remain a defining reality for many. To tackle these challenges, the local private sector can play an important role in leveraging digital technology and working with mobile operators and the public sector to deliver sustainable and equitable services. Therefore, the objective of this fund is to demonstrate how digital technology, including mobile, can support and scale the delivery of urban services to underserved populations. Also to demonstrate the socio-economic, commercial, and environmental and climate impact of digital urban services, as well as to demonstrate the business and/or partnership models required to enable digital urban services to be adapted at scale, and how partnerships with mobile operators and other technology companies can improve the scale and sustainability of digital urban services. Through the fund, the support that is provided to grantees include grant funding between £100,000 and £200,050 to support projects over 15 to 18 months. There is a matching funding component that's required. Therefore, I urge you to review the terms and conditions to see these requirements in depth. Boot camps and regular online clinics on topics such as product or service improvement, human-centered design, and usability testing is also provided, as well as learning exchange opportunities with other grantees and networking opportunities with other GSMA partners. Also, through our monitoring and evaluation team, we provide support to evidence socio-economic impact and promote product improvement. Similarly, we facilitate relationships with mobile operators and public sector organizations where relevant. And finally, we provide opportunity to increase your visibility and raising your profile to potential investors and partners through a profiling in GSMA publications, social media, and events. Just to review a quick overview of the eligibility criteria. Again, this is provided in depth in the terms and condition document, which you can access through the fund website. But you're eligible if you're a startup, small to medium-sized private sector company, or a social enterprise, and you can demonstrate the long-term sustainability and scalability of the innovation beyond the lifespan of the grant, and you have active users and revenue in at least one eligible low or middle income market. However, these type of organizations are not eligible to apply. Governments or appointed government agencies, mobile network operators, university or academic organizations, startup accelerators and incubators. We do encourage partnerships with these organizations. Therefore, review our downstream partner policy, also provided through the terms and conditions. In terms of geography, the fund covers low and middle income countries in Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. However, again, some exclusions apply, therefore, the terms and conditions. On the fund key dates, so the fund launched last month. We had a fund overview webinar last week, so you can also access that recording through the fund website. This week covers a series of webinars or topical, webinars on the different topics that are covered by the fund. There was a plastics and waste management session yesterday, which you can also access through the fund website. We are covering sanitation today, water tomorrow, and finally the energy sector on Thursday. A key date to remember is 2nd of July, which is the pitch stage, basically closing period. Therefore, you need to have submitted your pitch, by 2nd of July. Between August and 5th of November is the proposal stage, whereby shortlisted applicants submit a full project proposal, which includes technical proposal, project implementation plan, and budget. Finally, the selection will be made in late November, with contracting completed by March 22nd. I will now hand over to my colleague George to lead the next part of the session, which focuses on the sector-specific insights. Over to you, George.
Thanks a lot, Lema. Thanks. Yeah. My name is George Kibalabawa, and I'm a Senior Insights and Advocacy Manager with the Digital Utilities team. And as Lemma said, I'll briefly talk through why we think funding innovations in urban sanitation is important, what the challenges are, and how digital solutions can respond to those challenges. Finally, I'll talk a bit about what probably most people here are interested in, which is sort of our funding objectives in the sanitation sector with this upcoming fund. And I'll also briefly talk about what kind of innovations we've funded in the past. On over half of the world's population, 4.2 billion people currently do not have access to safely managed sanitation services. It's a huge global challenge. And if we want to address Sustainable Development Goal 6 by 2030, there's a lot of progress that would have to be unlocked. The consequences of poor sanitation are quite far-reaching, affecting obviously public health, but also wealth, education, and gender equality. And as the recent COVID-19 pandemic has shown, access to water, sanitation, and hygiene is also very critical for societal resilience and its capability to withstand sudden shocks. And over sort of the last years of rapid urbanization across many low and middle income countries, urban population growth continues to outpace growth in sewer access, with many cities and utilities struggling to provide sanitation services to informal settlements, where the majority of the population in least developed countries currently lives. Some critical sector challenges include unequal access. So many households, particularly those living in informal settlements, do not have access to even at least basic sanitation services. And this is often perpetuated by unequal government support, such as subsidies that tend to favor already rich and connected households, with governments struggling to provide funding and service models that can actually address the realities faced by low-income urban populations. We also see a very fragmented sanitation value chain from containment, emptying, transport to treatment. Sanitation value chains in urban sanitation systems are very complex, and they involve coordination between multiple different stakeholders, sometimes from different organizations. And oftentimes one sees in several cities that these value chains are highly fragmented. There's also a lack of accountability. Sanitation is characterized by overlapping spheres of authority and regulatory authority, with national, regional, and city governments all having competing authority in certain cases. It also faces funding challenges and regulatory uncertainty, which means that innovators and entrepreneurs that want to deploy innovative business models aren't certain whether it's actually legal and sustainable to deploy these models in urban contexts. And then lastly, I want to talk a bit about on this slide on how digital solutions can actually help address these challenges. So we've seen through our work and some of our research that GIS-based mapping and tracking tools can be key for urban sanitation service providers to reduce their operational costs and increase customer reach. We've done some interesting work with Kampala City Authority on this in the past that you can check out in our report, Digital Solutions for the Urban Poor. We also have seen can improve revenue connection and affordability. Here we've done maybe one of my colleagues can paste it in the chat. We've done a paper with CGAB called Testing the Waters, Digital Payments in Water and Sanitation, that looks at that impact a bit more closely across a range of organizations. And then digital tools also to provide municipalities and donors with better data about the state of sanitation services in cities and enable evidence-based planning for service expansion. We simply need more data and information about the state of sanitation in a lot of cities, as well as these are rapidly changing and a lot of cities lack good data to plan for the future. Next slide, please, Lemma. Thanks. So looking at the mobile/digital technologies in detail that are key in the sanitation sector, obviously voice, SMS, and USSD functions are very important, given that most people have access, not all people have access to smartphones, and they can be very key to enable communication between providers and consumers, but they can also be used to raise public awareness and drive behavioral changes when introducing new service models or product offerings. Then we have also the role of IoT, machine-to-machine communication, and GIS tracking, which, as I illustrated earlier, can lead to smart monitoring of system performance and can minimize technical losses or losses due to lack of coordination and improve operational efficiency. Then digital payments, they can reduce collection costs, increase revenue, and enable new business models such as pay-as-you-go, which is already quite relevant in the energy and water sectors. It allows a lot of low-income customers to make micro payments towards services or assets that they could otherwise not afford. Lastly, the role of big data and AI. So, the use of large-scale data sets to improve decision-making, and in the sanitation sector, particularly relevant, the use of geospatial data coupled with other innovative data sets to plan for service expansions in the context of a rapidly changing context. It can also be important to make sanitation systems more resilient to dynamics such as climate change as well. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to, before talking about what sectors we want to fund with this fund, what priority areas we'd like to fund as part of this fund, just briefly give an overview of what we funded in the past in the sanitation sector. So we've supported 6 sanitation organizations in 4 countries, and the grants supported digital solutions in areas such as digital payments, mobile applications, and GIS tracking. And what's quite encouraging for us, given that we want to enable the organizations that we fund to raise follow-on funding, is that more than £4.4 million has been raised by these grantees in follow-on funding following the award of our grant. And going forward, our focus in sanitation is not going to shift fundamentally from what we funded in the past, because we believe it's quite important to continue to fund some of the models we funded in the past. But let me just give you a brief overview of what exactly those topic areas are. So we want to support technologies that substantially lower the operating cost of sanitation service providers, like container-based sanitation service providers, for example. We want to trial business models that integrate digital payments, as we've done in the past, for instance, with a grant to Luwat. And we also want to drive potential synergies between sanitation and other core services, such as waste management. That's particularly exciting for us, given that waste management is a new topic that we'd like to fund, and we see a lot of potential synergies between sanitation and solid waste management, for instance. And then lastly, we also want to explore the use of unconventional data sets and big data to support more effective planning and regulation in the sector. If this topic interests you, the Toilet Board Coalition and us are hosting a session at World Water Week that will explore this topic in more depth, and you can follow our newsletter if you'd like more information on that. I will now hand over to my colleague Kat, who will moderate the panel discussion, and please feel free to look at our insights if you want to learn more about our research in the sanitation sector. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, George. Hi, everyone. My name is Katrina, and I'm an insights analyst for the Digital Utilities team. Today, I'm very glad to be joined by Venugopal Gupta, Director, Accelerator Program at Toilet Board Coalition, Virginia Gardner, the CEO of Luwat, and Mwanza Mukuka, the Sanitation Specialist at Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. And thank you all so much for joining me. Let's start with Mwanza. So in light of the challenges George underlined today, utilities are increasingly ramping up their efforts to improve sanitation provision. Could you share a little bit about how Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company are doing this?
Thanks, Kat. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As Kate Carter said, I'm from Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. This is a utility that is providing water and sanitation services to to the residents in Lusaka province. But specifically, I want to focus on Lusaka city, where we have made headways with regards to provision of water and sanitation services. So just as a brief background, in 2011, Lusaka Water developed a sanitation master plan, whose the main focus of providing sanitation services, mostly 50% on sewerage and 50% on sanitation. What then followed was through a combination of various donors, including the World Bank, AFDB, EIB, KFW, as well as Bill and Melinda Gates, the Lusaka Sanitation Program was the first initiative that resulted from the Sanitation Master Plan. So through this whole process, what we have done as a utility was we wanted to ensure that we provide services, especially to our low-income customers who make up 70% of the population in Lusaka city. And then recently, like in 2019, what we have seen and what I think has enabled Lusaka Water to really carry out the services and also make an impact to the low-income areas was the fact that the utility, through the regulator called our National Water and Sanitation Council, revised our licensing conditions. So instead of us being Lusaka Water and Storage Company, we are now called Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company. This means that we are liable as a utility to provide sanitation services to all low-income communities. So currently what we are undertaking under the Lusaka Sanitation Program, which is very focused on ensuring that the capacity of the utility is built, is we are constructing household sanitation facilities in the low-income areas where we have seen a lot of, which are more like cholera hotspots. And these facilities are constructed using a subsidy mechanism as a service model, although we do not call it a subsidy because we are aware of the fact that sanitation is really a household responsibility. But then when we look at also the social and economic status of low-income community customers, they're not really able to meet the full cost of sanitation, and therefore we are providing what we are calling a sanitation discount to the households where we are constructing these facilities. In addition, we are also carrying out what we are calling the FSM business business, where we have partnered with the private sector in Lusaka. So the way we have done this is the fact that we realized that our septic tank market in Lusaka was more or less organized compared to our pit emptying markets. If you followed
Okay, perhaps we have lost Wanza. Wanza, can you hear us? No. Okay. Moving on, Vnugopal, I'm just wondering if you could expand a little bit on how digital technologies enable new innovations and business models in the sector, now that the sector is getting increased attention from utilities and also the private sector. Would be great to hear a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Katrina. Thank you for having me here. And just a quick introduction. I work for Toilet Board Coalition, which works closely with sanitation entrepreneurs across business models and sanitation. I think we are seeing three broad areas where technology and digital is helping sanitation SMEs. First is the operational efficiency. I think in many cases we see SMEs able to reduce their cost of transaction, reduce their costs of operations by employing digital interfaces, not just on, let's say, payment collection, digital interfaces, right now also helping in cleaning and operations and maintenance of toilets, for example, of community sanitation centers, etc. The second area where we see a huge impact of digital for business is the whole gathering intelligence piece. You know, as consumers, engage with the business, can the digital interface learn more about the customers? Can it deliver a kind of intelligence in real time that can then support decision making? Fast decision making, and we are seeing some of this in waste treatment happen very effectively. where waste treatment plants or waste treatment equipment is quickly able to real time understand the operational parameters, and that helps entrepreneurs to design better waste treatment processes, but also helps entrepreneurs to sort of look at how more revenue streams can be built on existing processes. And then finally, I think the digital interface is very strategic in nature. I mean, I'm thinking of so many assets that are being created by sanitation entrepreneurs. And in some cases, because the size of these sanitation entrepreneurs, they are not able to really bring about the kind of dedicated channels that large companies have in reaching out to companies. And therefore, technology can play a part wherein some sort of platform can be created and the SME can reach out to its customer through a real-time interface, through a digital interface. Not only does it reduce the distance between the business and the customer, which is really key for a growing SME, but in many cases, it also helps a very low cost, cost-efficient scale-up for the SME. So I think on the operational efficiency, on real-time intelligence, as well as on the overall strategic development, I think it's the digital technology a critical role.
Thank you, Venugopal. So you mentioned operational efficiency, gathering intelligence, and the importance of the digital interface. But what's next for digital innovation in sanitation? And perhaps you could also talk a little bit about where you would identify the current gaps as well.
I think a lot of the activity in the next phase, I'm thinking, would focus around sensors and IoT. We have a very good, I would say, start in that area. But I think more varied kind of sensors and more IoT devices are needed to sort of complete the loop. I mean, George was talking about this earlier during the waste treatment slide, and he talked about how an end-to-end visibility is needed for the waste treatment process. And I think as more and more sensors and IoT devices proliferate, they can simply transmit data to a platform, and we'll have that kind of visibility. The other that we are seeing, is on artificial intelligence. We are now supporting models which are using artificial intelligence, for example, in waste segregation. The manual efficiency in waste segregation, at least in India, is maybe around 60-70%. But artificial intelligence has allowed it to be raised to about 85%, almost 90% in some cases, and that's huge. It's a low cost, very high accuracy kind of business model. So I definitely would wish that the artificial intelligence stream grows. And then finally, robotics. In India recently, laws have been enacted which make it illegal for manual labor to be employed in certain aspects of waste treatment, etc. And therefore, I think that is where human rights and sanitation in a way sort of come together, and robots can be employed not only to sort of collect waste, but also to analyze the waste. I mean, robots are right now analyzing the waste for any early signs of epidemic. They're analyzing the waste for potential blockages in the sewer system. Maybe they can, at some point in the future, they can give us a complete blueprint of a waste of a community with lots of data around health and community characteristics, etc. So I think on the sensor part, more and varied kinds of sensors, artificial intelligence and robotics, I think we're seeing, I would say that's the sort of next wave of digital.
Very interesting. Thanks, Venugopal. And Virginia, so Venugopal just shared some really interesting and innovative digital solutions. As a private sanitation provider, could you tell us a bit more about how Luwat is leveraging some of these technologies across its operations?
Sure. Thank you, Kat. So yeah, just a quick introduction. I'm the founder and CEO of Luwat, and we are a developer of high quality non-sewered sanitation solutions, which we generally provide in a business to business type of model to servicing companies, starting with the company that we've set up in Antananarivo, Madagascar, and we also have operations in the Philippines and other countries. And so I guess just to sort of zoom out for a moment, the adoption of non-sewered sanitation at a wide scale, where you have actually sustainable treatment, is really a leapfrog type of technology, much like the mobile phone itself. And the need for logistics to support that is tremendous, and it covers many, many aspects of how you deliver a service. And at Luwat, because we work with other companies in country, so municipal service providers, we see that as a really scalable and exciting opportunity to create local jobs in servicing and also sort of long-term impact. But at the same time, digital technology can play a really important role in ensuring that that's done successfully and correctly in terms of sustainable financial models, as well as tracking of activities, whether that's done through sensors or other means. And so what we've done at Luwat, and with support from the GSMA, we've developed a couple of generations of tools that we use to support that implementation. That includes facilitating customer payments, tracking activities of service providers, and effectively having a digital tool that supports monitoring of all the KPIs of the business. And so, Pat, sorry, you asked me a specific question, and I've just gone off track a little bit explaining a bunch of things about what we do. One of the things I wanted to note down that I think is quite important, and that we've experienced with our business in Madagascar, is that it's also important to remember the basics. So in the context of Madagascar, when we started working with the GSMA, we had a very low number of customers who were using mobile money at all for anything in their day-to-day lives. And these are urban poor living in the capital city. And so, we took it almost as a given. I mean, it is a given that adopting mobile payments is absolutely key for reducing operating costs on a service. And we've been very successful, I'm happy to say, in doing that across our customer base. And that's also thanks to the support from the GSMA. But those types of simple things as well, that actually required Luwat's local team to really educate customers. Linked to that is also additional positive impact on our end users, because a lot of our contract holders are women heads of home who might not have been using mobile money at all and are now using it every week or every month, actually. But engaging with that interface a lot more often. So yeah, I guess those are just some practical points around it. I'm happy to expand on anything, but I won't go on any longer.
Thanks, Virginia. That's great. Yeah, that's great, and it's impressive to see how Luwat is playing such an important role in improving digital literacy, and like you say, perhaps even among women who previously weren't using these digital tools. So well done there. That's great. And given your journey so far, what are some of the learnings you would share with other sanitation organizations present here today? And what advice would you give to them when seeking to deploy digital tools?
I would say I would put two key points on the table. The first one is it's not about whether you want to deploy digital tools. It's about when you develop and deploy them, because I don't think it's possible to create sustainable and scalable non-sewered sanitation solutions without them. And the second point that I would say is that it's very easy, and we've seen this in many examples outside of Luwat as well as sort of some of the challenges that we've faced and overcome within our own projects. it's easy to underestimate how much goes into developing effective tools in this space. And it's also easy to really sort of shoot for the moon in terms of what you're trying to achieve. It's important to really focus in on the MVP. What are the really main things what are the first things that you're going to do? How are you going to stage the development of your project? Be realistic about what you can achieve with the support that the GSMA is offering, so that you can make sure that you come to the end of the project with really tangible improvements in your operation, because I think that's a really important part of making it successful for the enterprises that take it on, as well as for the shared objectives of the program.
Very interesting. Thank you. So don't be too ambitious, but rather be realistic and focus on an MVP before getting too overwhelmed, perhaps, is the key point there.
Yeah, I would say be very ambitious, but temper that with realism. So it's important to dream of everything, but it's also important to set goals which are smart.
Great. Thank you so much, Virginia. And perhaps I'll stop here for a minute to see if we have Mwanza back on the line. Great. Thank you so much for joining, Mwanza. And in light of some of the challenges Virginia has just shared with us, I wanted to hone in a little bit on what are the biggest challenges utilities face throughout their digital adoption, and also what advice you would give to innovators in the sector who are seeking to support these utilities during this journey.
All right, thank you so much, Karan. I apologize for that. I think based on the initial insights that we gave around the services and the products we're providing as Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company, I think one journey we have taken is also try to ride on really the digital platform to ensure that the services are accessed especially from our customers in the low income areas. One thing that we are also currently undertaking, which is quite linked to all the works we are doing, is we had currently carrying out a sanitation database where we have our private operators as well as the contractors, the masons that are constructing our facilities, providing data like geo-reference data, because the overall plan of the utility is actually to move towards scheduled dislodging, but we realize that is a process that's going to take some time for us to get there. So what we have done is, in terms of really providing solutions and also challenges we have seen working with our private operators as well as the mason, is the fact that once you put up an innovation, really, I think we need to be very focused on understanding who our end customers are. So we need to be very intentional about being human-centered around some of the innovations we are putting up. For instance, I want to give an example where we had to actually undertake training when we developed what we are calling our Lusaka Sanitation Database, where we expect our service providers to give us information to input in our system, and then that is linked to our GIS database, because then that enables us to know where we have emptied a facility and then plan around when the next time we are able to empty that facility. We realized that the people that actually were key in this process to get the information, who are the service providers, were not really computer literate. And in terms of even smartphones, some of them were not really able. They know how to make a call, they know how to read a text, but then for them to input data, we had to invest in training, which we are still currently undertaking. So in terms of the challenges, I think it's really the adoption by the end users, because when we come up with an innovation, really, the end user is a person who is in the low-income community, who we need to be mindful of the fact that, are they actually computer literate, or do they have a smartphone? Are they able to use this app so that it inputs for us to have the overall information that we want? And then secondly, in terms of the challenge that we also have, I earlier alluded to the fact that in Lusaka, a lot of people have phones, but most phones are not smartphones. And when it comes to most applications, unless it's a USSD, you need people to actually maybe download an app. But then also from the experiences that we have, really in terms of innovation, Lusaka is, like Zambia, is actually just waking up to become part of, like really adopt and start to use that as a day-to-day life. So in terms of the challenges, I think what we have encountered is we need a lot of advocacy around some of the applications we've developed. Recently, Lusaka Water develops an app for us to, for people to pay their water bills as well as inquire. And what we have seen is people in the high and medium communities are able to use that app, but then the people in the low income community are not really utilizing that app. And what we're trying to do is to ensure that we carry out a lot of advocacy around that and ensure that we are deliberate about the innovations we are putting up to ensure that it meets our overall goal. I think one thing I also want to highlight is the fact that we cannot do away with innovation, and especially digital, in terms of digital, because it really assists us in carrying out work and also make decisions in terms as well as decision makers. And so it is important, but we need to be deliberate and also ensure that we are, as much as we put up an innovation, we should be able to follow up. We need to monitor and ensure that the people who are the key in inputting and giving us the actual data understand what we want for us to make the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwanda. Some really key lessons for innovators out there is focus on human-centered design, like you said, invest in training to drive end-user adoption, but also make sure that these tools are adaptable to low-income communities and are focused on those end users who need it most. Thank you so much, Mwanda. And Vnugopal, diving a little bit deeper into the partnerships topic here, beyond utilities and innovators, how can digital tools also support government and the private sector to work together on sanitation provision?
Of course, yeah. Before I go to that question, I think a very nice point that Mwanda made, I wanted to just highlight that, which is the whole about adoption. When we work with entrepreneurs, we realize more and more that it's not a revenue problem, and therefore revenue is not a sales problem, but it's mostly an adoption problem. The innovations are very effective, they're good, but end of the day, they need to be adopted by the end user, and that's really key for them. And we see that a lot of times, in order to increase adoption, we follow sales maximization approaches, and that often do not work, because sales maximization and adoption maximization are very different strategies in communities. Adoption perhaps requires you to induce trial, whereas sales maximization could lead you towards discounts and offering freebies, etc., etc. So I think it's a very important point that Mwanda made. I just wanted to highlight that. I think on the partnerships, we worked a little bit with the governments, and we realized that one of the policy recommendations from our side to governments was that wider business sector needs to get engaged in sanitation. It should not be simply the sanitation companies or companies that are directly related to sanitation, but a wider set of companies, because if there's a large company and that enforces safe and sustainable sanitation across their supply chain, across their partner network, across their people network, I think we can assume that safe sanitation will start becoming mainstream. And therefore, I think how digital enables doing that is through platforms. We are seeing some platform models come in which allow large companies to not only understand where waste is being created, but also to help them decide on how best to treat that waste, how best to manage that waste. That delivers a level of sustainability to corporates, but it also brings government and government's compliance criteria, government's sustainability criteria, etc., onto a digital interface which is interpreted very clearly by the wider business community. And therefore, I would say that if the government and the wider business community have to come together, then the platform can provide a very effective digital interface. And we are seeing some of these platforms in various parts of.
Thank you, Nugopal. And so we've spoken about partnerships, we've spoken about digital innovation, but all of this costs money. And bearing that in mind, Virginia, it would be great to hear what kind of support you find most important from funders and enabling organizations in the sector.
Well, I mean, I think I would probably bring it back to a point which has been made a couple of times, but I think it's really important not to underestimate the importance of tailoring a solution around end user adoption and ensuring that you have the right systems in place for training and local support, which I think that external funders and stakeholders can help with. I've noticed a couple questions popping up on the panel about sanitation service providers and working with government. And I actually think that's another example. I think that funders in many cases can help to leverage those types of partnerships, or at least can play a role in helping to sort of support how those things are initiated. The role of data in sanitation solution implementation is extremely important, and being able to show results through digital technology is more objective often and extremely useful for that as well. And then in terms of, I think that if you are with sanitation, I believe that there's always a role for municipal and government structures to play in widespread rollout. And that is a challenge in the sector. And at the same time, I do think it's also an opportunity for innovators. And I think to break those barriers, often what's required is sort of being able to show what you can bring to the table. I mentioned data earlier. Another example, which is a bit different, is, in our Madagascar operation, the entity is also generating energy and fertilizer from waste, which has monetary value. The fertilizer is sold locally, and that sort of value add that can be brought to the system can also be a really useful way to engage government partners. So yeah, I think that in all of these things, technology has a very important role to play. Again, a long-winded answer to a simple question.
Yes, no, indeed, circular economy is another area we're very interested in, and like you say, without digital tools, it becomes a lot more complicated to manage. So it's very interesting
Absolutely.
that you brought that up as well. And within that topic, Nugopal, there's also a question for you on how financially viable some of these emerging business models are. And is digital innovation helping attract more financing in the sector?
I think so. I think if I look at our portfolio of 45 businesses that we support, I would say that, if you were to ask me this question in 2018, I would have said that, predominantly the businesses are right now in the sort of grant and philanthropic capital space. But I think right now I would say that predominantly, enterprises are profitable on a sort of gross basis first. Obviously, net profitability comes only at a certain scale. So that's quite heartening. I think from an investment perspective, technology does two things. One, like I talked about, the operational efficiency. So an enterprise using technology, can hope to achieve operational efficiencies both on cost as well as on service performance, service excellence, etc. And the other side is that data-driven decision making, and now sensors and IoT and platforms exist which can give you real-time data. And so a data-driven decision-making leading to growth in revenue, leading to scale-up is always welcome to investors. So I think both from an operational excellence perspective, also from an intelligence perspective, I think technology can play a huge role in attracting fresh investment.
Yes, interesting to think about the relationship between scale and digital tools, and definitely they increase commercial sustainability as scale is achieved. So that's very interesting. And we also have a question for Mwanza from Shadrach. Mwanza, in your opinion, is having a call center feasible in managing or to manage the entire value chain?
Please just come again, please.
Yes, so is having a call center feasible in managing the entire value chain? So perhaps you could develop a little bit more on how you use the call center and how this supports you.
Yeah, okay, all right, thanks for that. Yeah, so I think it really works in two ways. Like I mentioned, we right now Lusaka Water is just really developing the call center. We previously did not have a call center, but we had what we call frontline staff and a toll-free number where people could call in. So in terms of having services provided through the call center, this is when we want to try and venture into that avenue. But overall, what we have been working with is we have offices centered around the entire city, even in low-income areas, and then we have like frontline staff, and then we carry out a lot of community engagements as well as advertising for various products and services. I think my opinion is I think it actually is it's viable. It assists with provision of services, especially for the medium and high income customers in a particular community. For the low income areas, this is like I mentioned, it's a transition. I think people are now learning that there could be, and especially the fact that now, like previously in 2019 or last year, we never anticipated COVID, and so we've realized the need for us to actually be innovative around how we're providing products and services. So I think moving forward, and also just what has happened around the communities, really, I think it's something that is essential to, especially for service providers, to probably factor in and invest in having a call center. But I still insist that we just need to ensure that there's
all right.
Right now, I think it's important that we have, yeah.
Thank you, Mwanza. Thank you so much. And a new question. So we are sure our solution is... Okay, sorry, perhaps one to move on. So I'm going to let you give any final remarks you want to add, and then I'll pass on to my team to answer any questions that may come up about the fund specifically. So to any attendees, if you have any questions about the fund specifically, now is your chance to ask. And back to my panel, is there anything else you want to say, any message you want to leave with sanitation providers out there?
I'll start. I would just like to say that I think that the need for digital innovation in sanitation is so great that, number one, I'm really very happy that the GSMA has taken this initiative and really been the first, at least to really take it to this level in terms of funding these types of projects. It's such an important part of making the change that we need to make for the many people in the world who don't have access today. And I think that, we need more of it. This is the place to begin. And so I hope that there will be lots of applications for this, because this is such a key part of how we're going to make the change we need to make.
Thank you. Very important shout out from Virginia. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I want to say I can't agree more with Virginia. I think this is important, and I think it's actually the right time for us to, even as service providers, to actually start to move towards innovation, and especially around the digital platform. I think one thing that we have seen is the world is really revolving, and I think the pandemic has taught us a lot. And so you couldn't have launched this core at an appropriate time. And we hope that service providers will be able to provide the services that we want and reach the people that we want through those various innovations. Thank you.
Thanks, Mwanda. And over to you, Vinogapal.
I think, COVID, has delivered a kind of global campaign on hygiene. There is, the importance of hygiene is now well entrenched. Communities understand how important hygiene is. I think it's a right time not only for sanitation business models to sort of take the next leap in serving communities, but I think, like Virginia mentioned, I'm going to use that same phrase. It's not a question of if you need a digital interface. I think it's a question of when do you want to start building it. So I think, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thanks so much for your contribution and participation. I'm going to pass it on to my team now to wrap up and yeah, take us home. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Kat, and the panel speakers. That was wonderful. Thank you very much for your insights. So basically, just for the person who asked the last question, which says, do you prefer applications that touch all focus areas or innovations that rather go into detail on one or two of the focus areas? So the answers have been typed out. Just to recap them, there is no preference for particular or multiple sector focus. As long as the grant project covers any one of the focus areas, it is eligible. Again, just review the terms and conditions. I am just going to put up my screen quickly. So the link to the Innovation Fund website will be shared shortly on the chat, where you can access the terms and conditions, also FAQs, and also access the application link. We've also provided an email. If you have any questions that you would like to follow up with, I would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, if no other questions, we would like to thank all of you for your time. And yeah, we welcome you to apply. Again, as mentioned earlier, the key date to remember is 2nd of July. That is the application deadline. Otherwise, on behalf of my colleagues, thank you so much, and we can wrap up there.